You're probably wondering, is this game like Genshin Impact? I'm going to try to give you an idea of the similarities and differences throughout this video. It'll serve as a guide as well, so you can determine for yourself whether you want to try it or not. I'm a very show, not tell kind of person, so this video will be long, so skip to the sections you want. This video will cover 5 main topics. This is like Genshin, my overall review after 40 hours, endgame gear guide, and math. So a lot of you are probably looking for the defense ignore percent section. So you can skip to that if you want. 3, the characters, kind of like my personal feedback, and I'll show you why like certain teams aren't viable, and I think some of them should be. And then for number 4, to follow up on that, how can you make more playstyles viable with the current system they have? And as a bonus for number 5, I'm going to review the developers and the studio themselves, what they've done, and what you can kind of expect from. All right, so let's get into my review. So overall, I'm kind of burnt out of RPGs like Genshin Impact's, open world ones in particular. But I feel like this game does have enough it builds upon a lot of the existing systems you might see in other games, so it looks a lot like Genshin Impact. But the two things for me are freedom to just like build or do whatever you want without any like gatekeeping, like dailies or fatigue. And then the second is the action combat. As you can see, when I summoned Chaco there, these monsters rolled up barrier, which is pretty cool. I also like how your HP kind of matters, so these monsters actually do a good amount of your damage. Even at max gear, I get chipped a lot. And to heal, I have to get consumables, a lot like other Gacha games, but they barely heal you that much unless you craft a higher attack. So I like how fighting trash mobs they feel a little bit more tanky than other games, even with max gear, which is what I prefer. It feels like more of an action combat flow. Same goes for the bosses. So my hope is that developers continue building upon that. The other part, which is important, is the exploration. So in other games, like open RPG gachas, you open chests for like 1/50th of a pull for your favorite character. Well, in this game, you don't have to worry about that at all, and you can fully max them without anything really blocking you. Let's see. So achievements kind of matter here, and this makes exploration a little bit more interesting. I don't know if I have the time to do all this stuff, but as you can see, you can get 2% critical rate if you do all 58 of the Marmot mini games around the world, and this is for your account. So let me find, where is it? Here. You can see I have some titles for doing things, and then this are the cumulative effects for my account. So I think tying this together with achievements and exploration is a neat, like, MMORPG kind of deal, which is more, in my opinion, is better than opening a chest for like 1/50th of a pull for a character. So that's fun, but I don't know if I have the time to do all of that nowadays. So yeah, that's my overall review after 40 hours. I'm going to continue playing. I don't know if I'm going to play 3,000 hours like I did for the original game, which was Dragoness MMORPG. But I'm having a good time, and I really like the character design, so I'll continue playing for a bit. And look forward to future content. Alright, so that's my review. So I'm going to segue into the endgame map and some of the formulas, what you might get wrong, and what might not make immediate sense. So in general, when you're gearing for endgame, actually let me show you what the gear looks like. So these are kind of the stats that I currently have, and you'll notice a very specific ratio. And here you have like normally known as relics, but equipment in this game, and additionally they have runes which they took from their other game. So my gear is not going to be perfect, and there's a good reason why. So in order to estimate what you need for endgame in this game, and this can apply to a lot of games, the things you have to know are the crit resist curve is different than most games. So if you have 100% crit stat in your screen, it's actually going to be 45 to 50% effective crit rates. against a monster because they have different resistances. If you have 700% crit rate stats, that's not even enough to get 100%. Someone tested it with this chart here. It's not going to be 100% accurate, but this is just a general derived formula on what they tested. I've seen a lot of damage meters where they had 100% crit rate stat, but they did like 45% crit rate instead of 51. But the estimate is fine. So characters have slightly bit different starting stats, base attacks, crit rate, crit damage, so you have to adjust accordingly. Right now, 5 attack percent equipment is best for my Reina character. And if you've watched endgame guides from other videos, you might have come across this spreadsheet, which the Korean community has put a lot of efforts, and you're wondering why it's all attack. You're probably wondering why it's all attack. So, a couple of things that this sheet does not show you is that this assumes you are max in expiration, gear, stat values, and everything. So this is like the very end game final products, what your gear should look like. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you why it's this way and how you get there. So referencing my Discord posts again. One other thing you have to know is that there's 100% crit damage that you get that never appears on your stat screen. You can kind of see that it's here, I think. This is the additional critical damage dealt to enemies when a critical hit lands. Why is that the case? Well, because a lot of games, they define a normal critical hit without any additional stats to be plus 100% or 2 times your damage. And what usually happens is that the stat screen adds on top of that 100%. That's important for calculating how effective crit rate is or crit damage is. So if you don't understand that that exists, you're going to overvalue crit damage about 1.6 times. So in general, you want to aim for 8,000 displayed attack, 100% crit rate stat, 150% crit rate damage. So how do you do that? Well, first, you go hunt for crit rate runes. And you just stack them on your character until you get 100% crit rates around there. And you're gonna see why you use runes for that. And of course, my Reina, or pretty much everyone, needs 5% attack at the current stats. And then you'll want to craft the 3-piece shatter set and 2-piece of your elements. The reason why you want to craft 3-piece earth shatter is for the 20% defense ignore when you trigger an element, or known as a signal. Okay, and then how do you get to like these endgame stats? You'll need to reforge or reroll your substats, max your rune values, get exploration titles, max your karma, copies of your karma from the trials, awakenings, and rebalance your stats as you upgrade. So this is just an example of Reina. And this is when I had 5,600 displayed attack. I now have 6,000, but it's going to be really similar. So my 97% crit rate stat is going to be about 50.8% effective, and my crit damage stat is going to result into critical hits doing 264%. So as for why you want to wear attack percent armor, you can see in this comparison charts, my current chest is a 35% attack chest, main stats. And this is my score after using that formula. I don't know where. Okay, after this formula. So you need these 5 equations. It looks crazy, but it's not that bad after I go over it. So if I swap my current chest for a crit damage chest, I will lose about 5.8% final damage. If I swap it for crit rates, I'll only lose about 2.1%. However, crit is only temporarily less worse than crit damage here. It looks kind of nice, but attack just beats both of them as you keep going. So aim for around 100% crits. You can go for 137% crits if you're playing like IIIA and you want to see more numbers, but usually 100% crit is optimal. Okay, so you can see why a crit rate rune, you want to start using crit rate runes first to fill your crit rate, because my current crit rate rune gives me this much score. And then if I swap it for a flat attack, I get minus 3.8% because Reina has really low base attack. And if I swap it for a max crit damage rune, I'll lose 5.4% damage, even though the crit damage is 22.5%. So this is how you can kind of get an idea of where you should allocate your stats based off of the alternative. This is going to look complicated, but you have my permission to dump it into AI, but it may or may not be correct, so you might have to mess with it. The only thing that's going to be really different from other games is the crit rate. So you have to... The best way I can explain why the crit rates is a little bit different than other games, or why crit damage kind of sucks, is this. So in order to calculate your final damage gains from adding crit damage, you need to separate your normal... You need to include your normal attacks as well as your crit hit attacks. If your critical rate was 100%, you would not need to separate them. So another way of putting it is if you increase your attack, you would like directly increase your final damage because you're contributing to the critical hits, as the normal hits and the critical hit. And you can see that 57.3% of my total damage here is due to the crit hits. If you increase your critical damage, you will buff only the critical hits, which was 57.3% of your total damage. So let's say you add more crit damage stat, you're only going to increase this part of your final damage. If you increase your attack, you're going to increase both the 42.7% and the 57.3%, your regular hits and your crit hits. So that, along with like the other reasons, like your effective crit rates, I don't know if I go into deep, but pretty much because we have an effective crit rate of 50% instead of 100%, you have to do this extra formula here. This is what the average multiplier. I know it's kind of confusing, but this is just basic multiplication and algebra. And yeah, if you want to figure out, this is in this current situation of my current stats at the time, this is the equivalence for my overall damage gain. So 10% attack gives me 3.9% final damage. 9.7% crit rate stat gives me 3.9% damage. 87 flat attack gives me 3.9% final damage. 18.1% crit damage stat gives me 3.9% damage. So you can see kind of like why I would be increasing flat attack, because it's easier to gain this versus 18% crit damage from upgrading my gear and reforging. And a lot of people don't know about reforging, so I guess I can show that as well. Man, I really want to cut this video down, but oh god, it's going to be long. So if you're new for some reason and don't know, you can set your main options. This material is farmable and can be exchanged. All of these are farmable. You can go figure that out. Okay, so to reforge, you'll want to go into your inventory, equipment. You'll need this thingy. I don't forget what it's called, which you can get from chests and stuff, and you can exchange for currency as well. You can re-roll all of these stats at once, or you can lock in 4, but it gets more expensive. So I'm done with all my testing. I don't want max HP. I want these two. So I'm going to lock these two. I do like critical damage, but it kind of sucks. I'm just going to keep this open because I want some other things first. I want that. This is nice, and this could be re-rolled, but you can see it starts getting expensive, so I don't want to hit this too much. Okay, I'm happy with that. And as you see, I don't know if mine went that much higher. But anyway, that's how it goes. You can see I can kind of upgrade my 20% crit rates rune or swap it with something else as I get more titles. I can update my crit damage runes, stuff like that. But reforging is important to getting the max stat. Okay, so that pretty much covers it for attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage. I'm now going to go into defense ignore, which is something that I just tested today. So you're gonna wonder why we're doing Earth Shatter for the defensive. So I'm gonna go explain exactly how a defense ignore works. So overall, mobs have varying damage reduction, which reduces your full damage. Defense ignore percent counters that damage reduction that each mob has. Break does not, like if you break or reduce the white bar, it does not reduce the mob's damage reduction. Neither does signal trigger, unless you're wearing the set. So I tested this with Reyna, Cerise, and I've tried it from 0% to 72.19% defense ignore stats, which generates this equation. This looks complicated, but again, this is just saying the same stuff as here. It's just in math form, and it's actually a little bit simpler than it looks. But this is some more stuff you can dump in if you want to calculate it for stuff. So, a wildlife boar. It has 0% damage reduction. You can verify this by going to thick mist zone, hit a boar. You can see the critical damage hits. You can see the damage reduction, blah, blah, blah. So at 0% defense ignore stats, you will deal 100% of your full damage against the boar. At 100% defense ignore stats, you will deal 100% of your full damage against the boar. So defense ignore does not affect or increase your damage against this boar because it has no damage reduction. However, when we go to the level 90 Ogre Slaughter in the first raid, it has a 72.82% damage reduction stat. So, if you have 0% defense ignore, you will deal 27.18% of your full damage. Notice how, with your wildlife board, you're already doing your full damage. But as soon as you get damage reduction from certain enemies, like this ogre, you're not going to be doing your full damage. At 100% defense ignore stats, you should deal 100% of your full damage, like you did to the boar. So what does that look like, and what does that mean? So this is Reyna, and I use Windslayer, the skill, to test this. As you can see, for the wildlife boar, it did about 57,000 damage when I used Windslayer, and as I increase my defense ignore from 0 to 15%, the damage did not change. You can literally just go test this yourself. But if you look at the Ogre Slaughter, as soon as you get 15%, your damage goes from this tiny 15,000 to around 20 or 22,000. So that 72% damage reduction, you're seeing immediately right here because you have no defense ignore. So you're actually doing less of your damage than if you're fighting the boar because the Ogre Slaughter has this reduction. And as you go to 100%, you're going to be doing the same damage as you would against the boar. The level 76, let me see if I can update. So the level 76 thing is another monster in the thick mist zone. There's like a level 67 tree, or also known as an Ent. It has a different damage reduction stats than the Ogre Slaughter and the boar. So another way to look at it is that when you are fighting a wildlife boar and you have 15% defense ignore, it gives you 0% more damage. It will not increase your damage at all. You can test this yourself. If you fight the tree in the thick mist zone, it has a 40.51% damage reduction. So if you go from 0% defense ignore to 15%, you will get 10.21% damage. For the Ogre Slaughter, if you do 72 okay, sorry. If you go from 0% defense ignore to 15% defense ignore, you'll get plus 40.19% damage. But what this really is you're recovering your damage because it's deleted your damage from here. So let me say that again. So because of the defense ignore, your damage, your base damage without any defense ignore stat is going to be way less due to the high reduction. So it looks like you're getting a lot of damage here because it's plus 40%, but it's plus 40% from 0 to 15. You can see kind of like that 40% right here. This is where you're getting technically 40% damage, but what you're really doing is you're recovering all the way to where your normal damage should be if it was not reduced. So the 40% damage is this. You're going to go from 15,000 damage to about 22,000 damage, if that makes sense. So there's more ways I'm going to describe how this works. So let's say you're upgrading your character and you're getting more percent defense ignore. What does that look like? When you get 5% damage, you're getting 13% more damage from that 0%. This is a linear relationship. It looks kind of crazy. If you have 100% defense ignore, you're going to more than triple your damage. Yes, that is true if you're starting from 0%, because the monster smacked you all the way down here. So that 3 times damage is actually just bringing you back to where you were if you were fighting like a boar with no defense. But you can use that to calculate your gains of getting more defense ignore, because all these monsters do have damage reduction. So this is just more ways of putting it. So let's say you go from 70% to 75% defense ignore against the ogre. You will gain approximately 4.66% final damage for making that move. However, as with everything, there is a trade-off in opportunity costs. So, for example, if you get 10% more attack, where is it? Like shown in this chart, you're going to gain 3.9% final damage. But with the damage, with the way you can get defense ignore, it's from the Earth Shatter sets, or it's from the substat in Reforging. So you're usually not trading anything except for another substat. I think I tried to describe this like 10 times. Technically, you're getting back your damage, but technically, if you're fighting against the ogre, you're 3.67 timesing your damage by going to 100%. Just the same way, it's just a different way of saying things, but basically your true damage is up here. Their damage reduction brings you down. So it looks like, because you're starting from so far down, it looks like you're getting like a ton of damage from defense ignore, which you are, because you're fighting an ogre and it reduces your stats. But yeah, that's how you look at it. And then this is the data of how I collected it. I also have the video clips in here. I don't know if I just let me just prove it to you, because I'm a very show and not tell person. So the way you test this is you have your defense ignore, you hit the monster, and then I don't know if I drink the tomato stew, and then I hit the monster again with a normal attack, and you can see that it increased my damage. Let me get a base hit. There you go. That's how you test it. I did a lot of tests here, and this is just the stat, which I'll include in my Discord post. So that's how damage percent defense ignore works, and that's why you want it. And that's why you're wearing the Earth Shatter 3-piece set for now. Okay, so I think I need a second here because I just went over a bunch of stuff. I'll make a Discord post on this, and I'm sure people will try and test their own things. So let me go back to my outline. Kind of gets, I think there's other stuff I'm not to be able to cover, and just as a disclaimer, like, this is 1 week after the game just released, so I cannot test everything and I cannot answer all your questions, but this should give you a pretty good idea how you can calculate your stuff. And it applies to other games. I promise it looks crazy, but it's not. I try to show that. Okay, so that ends my endgame gear guide. For the next part of this video, this is more going to be like a feedback thing for the gameplay, as particularly the action combat in raids, not really for normal monsters. I want to go over the lack of viability with mixed teams elements and playstyle. So one of the things I mentioned in my review is, like, I love the freedom that you have in this game, the flexibility of what you can do, and just like change all your stats and all that really easily. But at the current state of the game, there is an imbalance, and I'm not too worried about the damage as so much, rather than how it feels and plays out. So I'm going to show you a couple examples. with multiple different teams, a single player, and then I'll go into multiplayer. So this is, you've probably seen this composition before. This is what I feel like they've done really, really well. This feels perfect to me. This feels like they made use of their game mechanic. I'll show you here. Oh, and by the way, this is also the ogre I've been referencing. I did a lot of testing on this ogre, which you can also do if you want. So, I'll just say that my bias is Reina. I like these types of characters. And I really like Charlotte in particular. I like Johnny's idea. I love him, he's funny. But Charlotte and Reina are my favorites. I want you, as I test this, to pay attention to the amount of elements that are being applied. Especially by each character. It's not perfect. I don't play this comp that much, actually. One thing I want to point out is how slow Reina is, or can be, versus Charlotte in applying air. And you can dash to apply more air, but your basic attacks won't. And by the way, if you're also new, I have a lot of upgrades that enhance their attacks, so when you're playing the game for the first time, you're not going to be able to do some of these skills. But anyway, overall, this playstyle is good. I'm not playing it well right now, but... Oh. But as you can see, the signal application is insane from Charlotte here when I do that Q attack. And I can do Tempest a lot with Reina, and I'm not really applying air as Reina. So let's look at Reina's air application here, because this is going to be important. Okay, so I got hit, so now I can't apply with that. I'm going to use my Q and E. And that's it. That's pretty much for... I can do more air application by dashing, but my basic attacks do not apply more air, which kind of sucks. So you think as the wind character, I could apply a lot of air. However, with Charlotte, I pop his Q, I explode it, and then I press F and I apply air. Press F again, I apply air. With Johnny, I have a skill that applies air. I can use twice as well. And that's what makes this team comp fun. I kind of butchered it in this video, but... yeah. Okay, so to save time, I'm not going to show you good gameplay with this. I just want you to pay attention to the application, especially Reina's, which is my favorite character. Okay, so that's an example of a good team composition that feels a lot of fun to play. But you're gonna start to see some of the imbalance in it already, particularly with poison and wind. The next team composition I'm going to show is another broken one, which is if you have all ice, the mono element one. So I'm just going to borrow some equipment real quick. By the way, these characters are almost max, Charlotte and Johnny. However, Othello is not. But I just give him random stuff because it doesn't even matter because of how broken mono element is. Anyway. Quick. I'll just steal Scarlet. So this is like a tag team mono ice. And this is like fun, good, broken. And the meta in multiplayer as well. Like, I wouldn't worry about the damage here, but it is going to be different because I'm going to be able to break the boss easily. I'm more worried about the signal application and whether you can use their tool. So I love Chaco. He's so broken. Look at him. Look at him go. Okay, anyway. I'll just bust my skills off Cerise. And then there's a shatter mechanic, which ice has. I apply more ice. I press G, I press Q, I press Choco Spin, I press Choco Knuckles. The ice is flying everywhere like crazy. There's tag combos. I'm pressing 3, I'm pressing, I don't know what, I'm pressing F, I'm grabbing. There's more ice. I'm not even doing my optimal rotation, and then he's gonna blow up. Othello has no gear. If I blow up Cerise, I think this should do a lot of damage. But I think you can tell there's already like a major difference from playing like mono ice, of how it plays out. And there's my skill that I should have used on Cerise to blow everything up. But yeah. And you're gonna notice this even more in multiplayer. I don't have really good examples of that because someone had too much gear. But anyway, that's to give you an idea of what mono ice looks like. And the team that I played before with Johnny and Poison and Ice can be just like that. I just didn't play it well. So those are the two good teams. Now let's start slowly declining by adding mixes to our team. So Dana can actually apply airborne. Cerise can apply airborne, albeit at a slow rate. And Reina has 4 methods to apply air. This is my favorite team composition, Jack of all trades. And I also just like all the characters in it, their designs. What I want to showcase in this example is how there's a lack of like self-reliance or individuality on Reina. Like she might as well not exist in this composition, and I'll show you why. You can press escape to get that, by the way, faster. So we're gonna do the rotation again. Got her for damage, and then we're gonna Reina. And watch her air application. That's it. That's her full kit. I want to die here because... Okay, there we go. If I want to apply more right now, I have to do the dash attack. I spam the dash attack, which burns my stamina. It's kind of slow. And if I do basic attacks in the air, it doesn't count. See here. But if I do the dash, it does. And see how slow the air is. Now I'm just going to focus on playing Dana and Cerise. And they're going to help me trigger the air, which is nice. And then Choco Spin's gonna go crazy with the air, and now I can actually play Reina and use her main attack, which is Tempest. And now I can kind of maintain air, so it's not this bad in this composition. But you'll notice that the people applying air is not Reina herself. With the character that only applies air, you kind of expect her to be able to do a little bit more. The reason why I'm looking for a change here is, let's say your Cerise is low HP as it is right now. I don't want to swap to Cerise to apply air from her whirlwind. I want to play as Reina and Dana until I have time to pop my heal and get her back up. But the problem is Reina is so low at applying airborne that it feels kind of bad. I know it doesn't feels okay here with my gameplay, but hopefully you can get an idea of why it's kind of not great. But I think to balance airborne, they made everyone apply a little bit of it. That way it doesn't get super broken. But again, this is like an okay team composition. But in a longer fight, it kind of sucks in terms of playing Reina and getting Tempest. I might as well just focus on playing Dana and Cerise. But yeah, that's an example of an okay composition that I run all the time. No problems clearing with it. But I just kind of want to show like how Reina can't really be a win knight, you know? And you'll see this a little bit more as I switch composite. Okay. So, I want to try this composition. So this is Eileen. She's support. She applies wind with 1 attack. Parisia can apply a little bit of airborne / wind, but not really. When I look at these character designs, I'm expecting Teresia to be a character that can be self-reliant and doesn't need her duo partner to apply bleed. I mean, she has 2 flails, she looks like a baddie. I feel like I could play this character on field if my other characters are low. And I see that I have the Premier Wind units and the Premier... what's supposed to be the Premier Wind support. And let's see how their signal application or element application is. So just remember how I applied Airborne with the Ice team, and let's look at this team. So first I'm going to talk about Teresia. She does have a duo bleed partner, but it kind of sucks still. As this type of character design, I expect her to be able to apply bleed sufficiently, and I'm doing shift, I'm burning a bunch of stamina. And I can apply this much bleed if I keep spamming spin, I'll throw in an E to apply stun. As you can see here, I got hit, so now I have to build up my rage by attacking the monster to reduce the cooldown, but it's still going to take a while. And I have no stamina to spam anymore, so the bleed kind of sucks. Alright. So I can't main field Teresia without a duo partner. That's clear. Now I'm going to play Eileen. So she has this, which is I upgraded. This is how much air she applies. And now she goes support mode. And this is Reina again. And this support mode does not apply air. Okay. Now I'm going to mainline Reina. I want to spam the dash to try and apply air. Kind of sucks. And we keep applying air. And if I get hits, I cannot apply much. I'm gonna go back to... I got sun here, let's not count this. Go back to Eileen. I'm gonna press her Q, which does more extra hits with my upgrade. I only get hits. It's not a good example, but it's with me dying, but just pay attention to how slow and how difficult it is to build air with this team. Based off of that tag team earlier, you would have thought it might have been nice to apply. Oh, and I also forgot to put equipment on Teresa, but and whatever. And you can apply more elements if you break the raid monster and you deplete the white bar. But Reina also has problems with that too, is that her kit takes way too long in terms of her animation speed to apply with. Let's see here. So you can kind of feel like, I know it doesn't work right now. You might be thinking, oh, you're splitting elements. Of course it doesn't make sense. But if you see here, all 3 of these can apply airborne. This is the Premier Airborne unit. This is the Premier Airborne supports. And I had struggle applying versus just like these 2 characters, Charlotte, which could do like a bunch of airborne, and these 2 characters. So my hope is that in the future, in the rebalance patch, that I could play Teresia, apply bleed, maybe not stun, apply bleed, apply rain, be Reina, do basic attacks, apply more wind faster, and Eileen, apply wind fast. So I kind of wish that compositions like these were more valuable. You can win with them, but as you can see there, it's not really fun to play. My last example, I have not gotten to play much, but I just want to demonstrate like a potential idea. So you can see that none of these elements are really similar at all. My hope is that a combination like this is possible. So Astria is like a on-field type character. She does a ton of single target damage without relying on others a lot. But these 2 can drop relics, which support. I think it's better to demonstrate with monsters rather than that. The raid, but I guess I can do the raid as well. Find some monsters. I went the wrong way. Let's go here. What I'm kind of hoping for an on-field character like this is that the supportive buffs from the support characters will last a little longer. So let's do something like this. Break, sword grab, puts down a relic that buffs everyone. I took it back. I'm gonna drop another relic. I'm gonna drop heals. Can't drop his relic right now, but whatever. And now I'm gonna go into Astria. And now I want to fight with this relic buff. But as you can see, it's gone already because of the tag swapping system. And you'll see why she's a main field character like this. Just does a ton of damage. I don't have any gear on her now. With being like a crossbow. And then I want to like swap to loots. Drop my heal. Drop my relic. And then I'll go to Astria. I'll drop more relics from loots. Now I'm double buffed. And I want Astria to be able to fight like this with both of the buffs for a while. Because she's an on-field type character. As you can see, I'm not doing really well. But as you can see, like the relics disappeared already. Because you're supposed to tag swap, tag swap, tag swap. But this character is an on-field type character, and she takes a lot of time to do a lot of damage. So the idea is I'm trying to get... The second problem is that the support buffs they just disappear really quickly because you're expected to chain it with other stuff. I think that's it for all my demonstrations in terms of single player. So you can get a kind of a feel of how the endgame works. And kind of the lack of viability. I can show you the multiplayer, but it's just going to be the same thing. So we have someone who's bleed and ice and I'm ice and wind here. I don't even know if this is useful. As you can see, we're kind of able to apply our elements, but my Reyna might as well not exist in this comp. I might as well just keep playing ice so I can actually get something done. And then they'll get a buff wipe here, and then we'll have to try again. So this is a bleed character that he has. He has his duo bleed character, which is Roxy, and then someone else, which I don't know. And I have 2 ice members, so I should be applying ice. And technically airborne. Oh, he has Castella, which is her son. And break. But as you see, I'm really pretty much not even playing Reyna because we're low on resources and I want to end the fights. I don't know if I can get some good footage of me applying air as Reyna. I don't think I even try at this point. So this is my dash, my E, and then none of her basic attacks count for air, which kind of sucks. But as you can see, we did eventually clear it in 10 minutes. We did trigger... This is going to probably hurt some of your eyes. We did end up triggering ice and bleed and air after we broke it at the very end. But most of the fight is not like that. Ice, bleed, air. Oh, that's because there's a specific break mechanic. Sorry if that hurt. Let's see. So this is another video clip where we had like no gear and there's like fire. Okay, actually, let me explain this. Ice, wind, wind, can't apply wind. Fire, fire, can apply wind, and part of his kit relies on wind. Break, ice, fire, fire. So this is like a duo fire comp and a 1 ice wind comp. And you'd think with this duo, I would apply a lot of wind. So what ends up happening when we fight the boss? Because they duo up on fire, we get a fire trigger. Because we have 3 ice characters, and Chaco's OP, we're about to get ice here, I think. And look at air. Fire and ice, and we're deleting the boss after the break. We were really low gear at this point. It was like a wall, actually. I try to finish off the air with Reyna, and I blow her kits. Do I get it here? I think if I dash, I might have gotten it. But I might as well just finish off with Cerise to get the air. The fire is activating a ton of damage. There's a break again. Fire, fire, fire. Okay, so there's that. But you can kind of, as I speed through this video, sorry if it hurts this eye, you can kind of see, like, how the elements get applied. Like, air takes a really long time to get there, even with all the air support we have. Okay, so that's just kind of my feedback. Oops, I don't know why that happened. And showcase of kind of how, like, the endgame and how, like, it kind of sucks to not be able to play the mix of teams versus, like, stacking element. So that's going to be important for the rebalancing. So this is just my opinion in terms of playing a lot. How could they make the system more valuable? So the two problems right now with the game is that individual characters should be able to apply more of the elements with high field time. What I mean by this. So, like, that Teresa example. I expect Teresa, without having to blow in her entire stamina bar, to be able to apply bleed by herself without her duo character. Even with her duo, Roxy, it was still taking a while when I was duoing with that player. Why this is important, I'm not going to go over because this video is probably super long already. But there's reasons why I feel like that should be the case. Basically, like, let's say you get hit or something and you can't apply your Q or E, well, you're kind of screwed. I could do more dash attacks to try and apply more of the elements, but it was painful, as you saw. The second is supportive buffs need to last longer, in my opinion. So that's the thing with the Astria rotation, where I drop relics and I expect to be able to play Astria, the on-field character, the premier on-field character, to be able to get the benefits. And not only will these supportive buffs buff your main character longer, it's going to buff your team or your other members that you play with in multiplayer. So this is kind of like an overall the meta. So stacking the same element works great. You QE swap, spam, plus QE tag, swap, F, whatever, you explode the boss. It's fun to blow up the boss. Here's the DMC style, Devil May Cry, Poison Wind, very fun, single target focus. Charlotte can apply poison, and Johnny, they're very self-sufficient. So Teresia is not very self-sufficient in applying bleed, but Charlotte and Johnny can apply poison really quickly. That makes sense, it's poison, but I think it's just not fun when it's only poison that gets you to have that high of a application. Maybe bleed should be higher from Teresia. What doesn't really work well right now, or in my opinion, and based off footage I've seen, is high field time and on-field characters. So Astria does well on her own already, but she can't really get the benefits from her supports that well because they don't really last that long. You might as well just play her without using your supports much, from what I've seen. The other problem I've seen is when you have two of the same elements and you have one different element. So the different element is going to really struggle to apply their own and trigger their own attacks. I think I mixed up the word signal here. I need to clarify what signal. Anyway, this kind of works with the duo. I don't know how to explain this. So there's a main element, and there's sub element, which is usually airborne. So the sub element for airborne in particular, or going to really struggle to actually be able to do anything because it takes forever for them to apply their elements because they're not stacking, obviously. And examples of that is Reyna. When I was playing Reyna, she cannot, as the premier Wind Knight, she can't really apply Wind that well. Which kind of sucks because her main skills are locked behind applying Wind, which is Tempest. And the Grab, which is behind Break. And Teresa is another example of kind of how I expect her to apply based off of her character design. For tank, there is one premier on-field tank, and it is Alex is his name of the character. So I think that he's a really cool concept. He's like an on-field tank. So this guy plays him a lot, so I watched some of his videos to get an idea. But here you can see him on-field tanking. Maybe it's better if I go to the end. So he's on-field tanking here, but he's kind of doing like nothing. Like he's reducing enemy defense. But he's not applying any signal doing this. Oh, he is actually down. Okay, so maybe he's not applying element a lot because he's focusing on blocking, and then there goes down. When he's in this blocking state, I kind of expect him to be able to apply a lot of shock. Kind of like a Dragoness, the Guardian has like certain effects like that, or other games. So this guy is the main tank, he can provoke the boss. Gonna keep like doing that. But you see he's not really like doing much here. He's applying down, but he's kind of struggling at it. And if you miss, you're not going to do that much, and the shock's going to disappear. But he's parrying the boss, which is really cool. Finally gets it down. And you're going to see that his other two characters just do a ton of damage. So you might as well not even be blocking as Alex here, especially in multiplayer. What I hope is that he can apply more shock while he's doing this and defending, instead of just down with like some sort of AoE, so there you get supporter buffs. Like just making the main tank like more useful. I don't know how to put this, but more utility on the tank. That's what I feel like is missing. Because you just might as well not play the tank in single player and multiplayer. Support and heal. So, I mentioned earlier, like the relics that were dropped down and like Eileen, the support characters barely last that long because the idea is right now you're supposed to swap, and refresh it. But due to that limitation of having to swap, you can't play a variety of teams because they take too long to apply their elements, etc. And the last playstyle which you can try is when you have 3 different elements, so like no one synchronizes with anyone. Maybe this shouldn't be viable just because of how the system works. And it could throw off a lot of balance, but that's just another potential way you could look at it. I wouldn't worry this. I'm not worried when 3 different elements don't work together. That just kind of makes sense, you know? But I kind of expect these other ones to work independently. So to kind of elaborate on that, I want to show you what a multiplayer could look like. You can try this. Disclaimer, I haven't fully tried this with other players because I don't have time and friends. But you can kind of like extrapolate from what I showed you earlier that this wouldn't work really well. And the main reasons: lack of signal application rates with mixed elements, individual characters, supportive buffs not lasting off-field. So you can have your on-field tank, which I just showed you, Alex. This is, let's say you get random queued in matchmaking when they add that feature. This guy wants to focus, this guy likes to play tank. There's not a lot of tank players. But the idea behind this is so that they will take aggro, so everyone else, these other 2 players, can DPS. And the tank's gonna apply a bunch of different support buffs and hold aggro, and then the other two players can just chill and focus on attacking the bot. So as you can see, this DPS tag team works well already. Actually, in my experience from playing with 3-player co-op, it does kind of suck. But it works, and it's one of the best teams right now. Especially, like, if there's not another DPS tag team. If there are 2, it's definitely going to blow up the boss. And then I want, like, if you get random queued with a 3rd player, let's say this person mains Astria or Theresia. I want this person to focus on playing Astria or Teresia like 80% of the time, and then swap back and forth between these other two buffers, because these two buffers will buff these two players as well, in multiplayer, which is fun. But if you can see from the color coding, we're not really gonna be applying anything but like poison. Dana in particular is not gonna be doing anything. He's never gonna. Dana's never gonna really apply ice here. And even with like Eileen, Reyna's still gonna struggle to apply airborne, even with these two. So this is just an idea of like, I'm complaining about the comps not feeling fun due to the inflexibility. So this is a suggestion of like what a potential flexibility could look like for multiplayer raids, which are a bunch of fun. I kind of wish the game was open like this, and I know it's not because they focus on the tag teaming thing and that simple rotation, but who wants to play, what is it? QE tag, QE tag, swap like the mono ice team all the time, you know? When you have so many different characters and you have favorites, I feel like you should be able to mix and match them a little bit more than. And they are planning to do a rebalance patch, so yeah, that's kind of my review for them if they're watching this video. That was my intention. Hopefully I was able to communicate what I was feeling in terms of the action combats. Next I'm going to go to reviewing the developers themselves. So this is something you won't really see people doing. But anyway, you can see I did a review on the DragonSword Awakening demo, and I was really worried that it felt too much like it felt too much like Genshin Impact in that demo, because they limited a lot of things, and I feel like a lot of people saw that and maybe were a bit shy to trying this game because it looked too much like Genshin Impact. The main thing that the main problem I had was that the controls for the controller were almost unplayable. So in order to hit Q or E, the same thing, apply a skill, you had to hit L2 plus square. That just feels awful for the main skills at least. And you can't rebind in the demo. I don't think you can rebind yet, but I think they're working on it. And I did mention my bias. I played Dragon Nest before. And then one of the developers actually replied to it. And they are gonna fix it. And so they did fix it. You can go try yourself. When you switch the controller, Q and E is gonna be R1, R2. I still recommend playing keyboard though, because that just plays the best. But you can see the developers did take in that feedback. I don't know if I get special treatment for being somewhat of a content creator. But another example would be when I had this game-breaking bug. Let me find it. Actually, a lot of people had this game-breaking bug. Let me find the context. I couldn't progress the main story basically on release, while some people could. And then they asked for my save file, and then they fixed it in the patch notes a day late. Like, not even a day later. Of course, they just released the game. So they're going to want to fix stuff, but they have been continually updating. And they've done stuff like fixing the matchmaking. I think a moderator said it or something. Anyway, if you watch this entire video, thanks. Hope it was helpful. Like I said, my intention with these videos is to teach you kind of how to fish. So kind of how you derive the math for these games. Maybe a little bit about game design and sneak peek or depth into the game review. This will probably be my only video because I want to play Dust Bloods and I just do not have the time to make a video like this. I have to play the game for 40 hours and then I have to spend more hours testing and changing my gear. It's fun, but I just want to do other things. So yeah, hope it helps give you an idea. Thanks for watching, and don't subscribe if you're expecting more DragonSword Awakening content.